What is up, guys? Welcome to BitBoy Crypto. My name is Ben. Today, we're going to be examining Coffeezilla's Celsius video. In this video, he rails against Alex Mashinsky, talks to a robot, and also discusses some of the victims' plights. It's obviously been a big year for Coffeezilla. He blew past me in subscribers this year. He just tweeted he's on the Joe Rogan podcast today, so absolutely phenomenal. Congratulations, Coffeezilla, for a great year. Celsius. Obviously, I had coins on Celsius. We lost about $3 million total, and hopefully we'll get some of it back one day. I'm not super hopeful about that. Right now, we're in the midst of fighting against retail clawbacks. That's really the fight that I've taken up right now. So let's get into it. I'm gonna react to Coffeezilla's video on Celsius.
Celsius is a billion-dollar company that told its customers to unbank yourself with crypto. But then last year, they declared bankruptcy and sold a new shirt. Unbankrupt yourself.
That's a pretty good shirt. That's a pretty good shirt. And I actually know the person who came up with the phrase unbank yourself, the slogan for Celsius. You want to talk about regrets? Like, that's a big regret. Now, the first crypto conference I ever went to was Blockchain World, I think, conference. It was in Atlantic City in July of 2018. And John McAfee was supposed to be the main speaker. Well, John McAfee didn't show up in person. He eventually did do a remote talk. But the first speaker, the keynote speaker that took over for John McAfee on day one to start the conference was Alex Mashinsky. First time I had ever seen him, first time I had ever heard about Celsius. And I remember, like, I was sold on what he was talking about. He was talking about bringing the next 100 million people into crypto. Well, ironically, he probably said 100 million people out of crypto.
Now, at the time, I reported on extreme incompetence, but stopped short of using the F word, fraud, because we just didn't have all the evidence. But today that changes because of thousands of pages of new court documents, Celsius insiders talking, and my personal interviews with victims.
Now, it's gonna be really interesting to see how he plays these, the court documents, because it looked like that was some stuff from the Examiner. The Examiner report actually really didn't have anything that was super condemning. It was just a poor report. It should have had condemning stuff in it, but it was poorly constructed.
Make no mistake, this was a gigantic fraud. People's lives have been ruined, and the founder might get away with it.
That's definitely not what we want to see. If there is fraud, and I believe that there is, you know, Alex Mashinsky does deserve to be held accountable. Probably needs to do at least some time in prison over this. I don't know how long, maybe not, maybe as much as SPF gets, I don't know, 10 to 15 years. I don't know, maybe at least 5. We'll have to see what happens here.
Shine a light on this issue. Here is my full investigation into the crypto lender, Celsius.
From corporations that dominate our lives. And that system, right, does not work for 95% of the people on the planet.
I think Alex Mashinsky actually started out with good intentions. I really do. I think he has problems being a narcissist, and I think that eventually things got out of control. But the reason why he connected with people so well is because I think at one time he was genuine. You hear in these sound bites, like, he's a really good speaker.
Why? Because the banks control all the money in the world. We talk about all the money in the world. What Celsius does is really helps people navigate in a safe way into this environment. So when you use a Celsius wallet, you know, okay, I'm gonna earn yield and I'm gonna stay safe in the safe environment because Celsius already did the homework and figured out what's safe.
Because you're safe. You're safe if you're a user with your funds on the platform, and behind the scenes, all the people in charge of generating the yield are doing the most risky, insane gambling you've ever seen.
Banks are not your friend.
But Alex is your friend?
Yes. So I have a lot of my own money in the company, several $100 million as well. I'm talking about as a user of the service, not as a equity shareholder. So basically everybody came in and said, hey, can I take the same ride on the same bus with you? You're earning 8.8%, can I earn it? And the answer is yes, you get exactly the same. You have $100 or $1,000 or $1 million, you earn the same yield as everybody else.
If you earn 8.8% on assets that get frozen that you never get back, you didn't actually earn anything.
Celsius customers told me that the reason they switched was just to get a higher yield.
And so that's what I thought I was doing. I thought I was loaning money to someone that had posted enough collateral to pay back in the event of a default.
So we've collected over $700 million of interest from the institution and distributed most of that. 80% of that went to the retail users 80% of whatever we collected. Celsians next to you are benefiting because we are lending the collateral you gave us.
Let me tell you about Alex Mashinsky. This guy knew how to repeat the same lines over and over and over again. He knew the points to hammer. He knew the talking points. Call it like the iron triangle, where no matter what question you get asked, you bring it back to one of three main points. And he did such a good job of that repetition, really brainwashing people and really selling the deal.
Distributing 80% of that income with all the other Celsians. So it's a win-win-win.
Celsius also said that in addition to making high yield, they were extremely conservative. They told customers that there was collateral backing up all their loans in case of a disaster. And the key thing to understand here is that this secured loan with collateral is much less risky than unsecured loans where there is no collateral. And ultimately, Celsius said because of this, a bank run wouldn't affect them. And these promises of safety and collateralization were key to people actually putting their money in with Celsius.
I really disagree with you here, Coffeezilla. I gotta say, I think that's wrong. I don't think most people looked and most people cared. I think the collateralized versus uncollateralized argument, I think all people did was they looked on the website and they saw that they could put stable coins or Bitcoin or Ethereum onto a platform, and they just looked at the percent. They said 8.8%. And this is the thing about crypto. In crypto, the gains are already so unbelievable that making 8.8% sounds super believable. And so I don't think a lot of people really investigate what was going on the back end. I can say I'm embarrassed. I didn't. I trusted Alex and I trusted the platform. I knew people that worked there and I thought they were good. And those people were good people. A lot of the Celsius employees got totally screwed by Alex. They've got money left all over that platform that they can't pull off. They took their bonuses in Cell Token for years. They had equity in the company to potentially one day cash out and make a lot of money. It's all worthless now. The only thing they can get back is some of the money that they left on the funds, hopefully, depending on what happens with the bankruptcy. But I don't think the collateralized versus uncollateralized loan was the main selling point. I think it was a robust platform that had lots of features. It had great user interface. It had a seemingly great spokesperson, great reputation. I think people just went with it. I remember when I went and did the Iced Coffee podcast with Stefan, he was so obsessed with getting yield on stable coins from BlockFi. He couldn't even believe it. But even some of those traditional financial YouTubers were taken by Celsius and by BlockFi and other types of these platforms. FTX obviously involved there as well. So I think the lesson that we all should have learned from this is that you can't take something at face value from one of these platforms. If you can't figure out exactly how they're generating the income, then you can't make a decision on whether it's safe or not.
The Examiner details not only systemic lying, a Ponzi-like scheme, but also tells us what I think constitutes fraud. According to the report, Celsius did not distribute up to 80% of its revenues to its customers because it had little to no profits to even distribute. Celsius also made no efforts to set its reward rates based on its yield. And according to the report, Celsius consistently set its reward rates based on what they perceived was necessary to beat the competition.
Exactly. I think this is a great point here. Now, I don't put a lot of stock into this report. It is important to note here, and I don't know if Coffeezilla will say this or if he says this in the video, but where they said it was a Ponzi-like scheme, that was actually a Celsius employee, not under oath, talking about what they thought was going on. So that's not, the Examiner did not make that call that it was a Ponzi-like scheme. That's a very important difference to note there. But this point here, Celsius consistently set its reward rates based on what was perceived to beat the competition. DeFi summer 2020, prices are skyrocketing. Money is everywhere. Yield farming is going crazy. And Celsius is making money hand over fist. And they lose focus of what their company was supposed to be about. And it becomes about beating the competition and beating the amount of money that they made the month before. Well, as the market would turn down, they would have to consistently up their risk, gamble more to try to get the same returns, which led to a lot of bad decisions.
And for most of Celsius's existence, the rewards it paid exceeded by substantial amounts the revenues Celsius could earn. The whole idea that we're paying 80% of what we make was a total fabrication. Celsius just wanted more customers. But eventually, when you have billions of dollars in assets, you have to pay rewards based on that. And the Celsius team realized they had a problem.
Now, that's a general statement, the Celsius team. There were people at Celsius that had no idea what was going on. There were people at Celsius that knew very well what was going on. So the Celsius team is like a real generalized statement here. I would let's name names on who knew. That's what I want to do.
Mashinsky, quote, overrode their recommendations and refused to do so. One example of this was when Jason Perman, a Celsius executive, recalled Mashinsky saying that Celsius could not cut its reward rates because of his belief that our customers will leave us. And that, quote, our investors didn't invest in us to shrink, they invested in us to double. They realized they were stuck with the other strategy.
Now, this is very common in these crypto insolvencies, whether it was Sam or whether it was Do Kwon or whether it was Stephen Ehrlich or whether it was Alex Mashinsky. They were all warned that there were problems in their plan, and they were too narcissistic to listen to those warnings and heed them. They just wanted to keep pushing forward.
Trying to raise what they were able to make with their assets by employing riskier investment strategies to try to get closer to profitability. They lied about this too. Mashinsky told the Financial Times in June 2021 this.
From a risk standpoint, we are probably one of the least risky businesses that regulators worldwide have ever seen.
You can't make that stuff up. You cannot make that up. This is absolutely ridiculous.
Around the time he was saying this, Celsius was over $500 million underwater on their liabilities. By the end of the year 2021, Celsius would owe $1 billion that they did not have.
It's 1.2 billion, I think is exactly what it was. They had $4.2 billion worth of assets. They're supposed to have 5.4. I think that was the number. But I think it was 1.2 billion when they froze things.
But anyways, what I would say if you were coming at my client is, look, all this lying and losing money, standard fake it till you make it stuff. They could have become profitable eventually.
Okay, here's the thing. This part in this video is awful. And here's why. And no offense, Coffeezilla. I mean, do your own thing. If you like this, what you're doing here, it must be working for you. But what I would say is the point that is being made in this conversation is so important to the entire crypto ecosystem. And I feel like it's very distracting watching it coming from a robot in this scene. I think this point would have been made a lot better, just in the standard way the video, his videos are usually done. Because this almost makes it seem like it's supposed to be entertaining. And this is maybe the most important point of the whole video. I want to go back to the point where we're talking about fake it till you make it. That's the important point I want to talk about. Basically, a lot of these crypto companies, they just figured that as long as Bitcoin could stay above a certain number and head back in the right direction, all of their insolvency problems would go away. So think about this. A 50% drop from $70,000 is $35,000. A 50% drop from $100,000 is $50,000. So the point being, a standard bear market drop for Bitcoin is 80 to 85%. Falling 85% from $70,000 is much further than these platforms thought Bitcoin was going to fall. If it hit 100K, they were prepared for that drawdown, but it didn't. So when it saw the 82% drawdown, it was what I think we peaked at, these platforms were not ready for that. And they thought if they could just get through those times, if they could pump coins, if they could fake it till they make it, eventually Bitcoin would go back up and they would be able to basically right their wrongs and nobody would know that they actually were insolvent. So there's a very great point about faking it till you make it. And that's why all of these platforms got exposed around the same time. So when Bitcoin was hitting around $17,000, $18,000, the temperature in the room was getting really hot for these platforms. And one by one, they went bust.
Much as it pains me to say this, I think you might be right. Let me see what I can do. If I'm going to demonstrate fraud, I need to get to the heart of Celsius. And that's when I found out about the Flywheel. The Flywheel was central to Celsius's plan to become profitable. Celsius was not just a crypto platform. They also had a crypto token called Cell, and they controlled the vast majority of it, up to 95%. So if the price of Cell went up, theoretically, the balance sheet of Celsius would also go up, and they could sustain these insane reward rates. However, in order to do so, they needed people to actually want Cell tokens.
Same thing as FTT and FTX. They did the exact same thing. They had multiple Flywheel tokens.
So the Flywheel was Mashinsky's plan to do that, to create a positive feedback loop. And the way they did this was set up Cell token like a rewards program, where you could earn bonus interest if you held a certain amount of Cell. On their website, they described this process as a self-sustaining ecosystem, where users would buy Cell, earn more yield, get more crypto, collect interest, earn more yield, lend more coins, collect more interest, and buy more Cell tokens. In 2022, their coin deployment specialist described their practices of buying up Cell and using customer coins as very Ponzi-like. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the core story. Not merely lying, it's a story of using customer funds to buy out your executives and manipulate your own cryptocurrency so you can sell for a higher price.
Now, just want to reiterate here again, the Ponzi-like phraseology there is from the employee, not from the examiner. The question is, was this intentional fraud? In my opinion, it's got to be intentional fraud. There's got to be intent there. There had to be willful lying. And the problem with Alex Mashinsky is that he's a narcissist, and I don't know if he thought he was lying. So there were certain times where obviously he lied. There were things he lied about, he knew. But back to the fake it till you make it thing, I think he really thought he could hold the entire thing together. And it didn't matter what they were doing, buying and selling the Cell token and paying out employees with worthless Cell tokens while the executives were making money, because overall, everybody was going to make money. Everyone was going to make yield because he was just living in the delusion of grandeur that he had propped up in his brain, still living the glory days. And he just couldn't get out of that mindset of, it's just so easy. We're just going to make money all the time. Crypto goes up forever. And I don't even know if he realized that they had become worse than a bank. And I'm not trying to absolve him of guilt here. I certainly think that there are things that occurred within Celsius that will be able to be pointed to as absolute fraud and criminal activity. I'm just saying, I don't know if this one thing that they're talking about here with the Cell token is going to be the thing that gets it over the finish line. If you want to look at something that can get over the finish line, look at the Bitcoin that was taken from Simon Dixon. I think it was like 288 Bitcoin taken from his account the day before the pause and added to the Celsius balance sheet. So there's a lot of criminal activity that was going on, but I'm not sure that this one is the smoking gun.
Hundreds of thousands of lives were ruined. And this, in my view, is where Celsius crossed the bright red line. Rather than just being an incompetent lender, they had created a scheme with Cell token where new users' funds had to be used to prop up Cell token value, which benefited their executives. It also created a need to use new customer funds to pay out old customers because of their impossibly high rates of rewards to fuel growth.
It's very important to point out here that this is a very common thing that you see in crypto. I'm not saying it's right. Certainly it's wrong, and we need to get rid of this kind of tokenomics within corporations that are involved in crypto. But he wasn't alone in this kind of scheme. There were a lot of other exchanges and platforms that were using the same precedent. I'd say Voyager was probably doing a lot of similar things here as well. Obviously, FTX was doing similar things as well. I think the problem is within the bad actors in the crypto space that think that this is okay to do. We've got to clean up the tokenomics around stuff like this. People have to understand that the way that things have been done via precedent in crypto when it comes to centralized entities has been wrong. It has been immoral. It has been unethical. And we know that now. So there has to be a higher standard in crypto for all of these platforms. But once again, I want to get into the point, is that the criminal activity that's the smoking gun? And I'm going to say no on that one as well. Securities violations, potentially. However, Southern District of New York, criminal, go to prison, federal crime. I don't know if that's the one. I've already told you what I think they should go after, which would be absolutely stealing funds from a customer to add to the company balance sheet.
They're trying to reopen their doors They have a new plan to basically distribute whatever's left back to the holders and lawyers.
Give me
And
my
I'm not going
money.
to go too much into the details of this plan, but if you're a creditor, you can visit this page to learn more. It's not a perfect plan by any means, but I'm not sure I have any better ideas of what to do with such a bad situation.
Well, I have an idea, Coffeezilla. How about you come out, stand up for the little guy, the retail investor who withdrew their money because they saw some dangerous, sketchy things on the platform, and now the UCC and White & Case are trying to do a retail clawback and take funds back from the customers that they withdrew and are in their bank accounts. I believe Coffeezilla would agree that insiders need to be punished. People that took money off of the exchange because they had information that average person on the site did not have, secret, smoking gun, tangible proof of insolvency, they should have to give part of their money back. Insider clawback. Alex Mashinsky should have to give all his money back he took, really from day one on the platform. However, Joe Blow, who put his life savings on there of $100,000 and got sketched out and pulled the money off, that's the little guy. That's who Coffeezilla is supposed to be standing up for. So I would really encourage him to come out with a strong message against those retail clawbacks. Because as he is constantly going at bad actors, there's no worse actors than the White & Case law firm here. The way the traditional system, the rigged system works, where the lawyers are getting all of the money, pursuing the money from the little guy. And it's a corrupt system. And I would hope that he would come out and make a statement and be against those retail clawbacks, especially the people for $100,000 to $250,000. Those people are going to get crushed by this. They don't have the money to get high-powered lawyers to fight the retail clawbacks, and they're just in a really bad situation. I can fight them. I can fight clawbacks. I'm not that concerned about it personally. I'm more concerned about the person that's going to get harmed by those. So I would really encourage you guys, if you are a fan of Coffeezilla, to go check him out on the Joe Rogan podcast when that comes out, and also make sure to urge him to make a statement about the clawbacks, because he's got a big, powerful voice right now, and that's something that we definitely need to help fight for the little guy here in crypto. All right, guys. Well, I guess that's it. I guess we saw the video. We reacted. We did not do the robot. I hope Coffeezilla didn't do the robot. That's all I got. Be blessed. Big boy out.